The Western Australian government says it's the first government in the country to develop its own strategic stockpile of diesel, which is separate from the National Reserve, while this ongoing oil supply chain crisis continues to unfold across the world. The WA Premier Roger Cook and the Energy Minister Amber-Jade Sanderson have just made the announcement this afternoon, and they say they've managed to secure 4 million litres of diesel through an independent fuel supplier, Cambridge Gulf. Now, the diesel will be stored up in the state's north in the Kimberley region and will be 100% state-owned. The government says it cost about $10 million to secure this fuel, but they expect it to be relatively cost neutral for the taxpayers once it's sold on at market rate when it's needed during those acute times. Now, in terms of the amount that's actually being stockpiled, let's put that into context. 4 million litres of diesel is a relatively small drop in the bucket compared to the National Reserve of about 2.5 billion litres of diesel. But the WA government says this strategic stockpile in Western Australia is not about volume. It's being stockpiled in a regional area because it's there to address WA's unique geography. Western Australia is one of, if not the largest single jurisdiction in the world, and that's a challenge the state government says it's trying to address. It's sometimes, even if fuel is available, it's difficult to actually get that fuel to the locations that need it, especially in those more remote areas. And again, that's the challenge the government says it's trying to address. Let's have a listen.
The national reserves are around between 30 and 40 days. It goes up and down. As I said, it's not about the days, it's about the location. It's not about the volume, it's about getting it to where it's needed most. And some of the most vulnerable areas of our state, remote communities, and those agricultural sectors that are at the end of the supply chain. That's what this is about.
About 2 weeks ago, the WA government announced it would be using emergency powers to compel fuel companies to pass on information about how much fuel it was selling, how it sets the price, and where that fuel was being sold. And part of these powers, the government says, is to ensure that any measures being implemented, actually, like the fuel excise, for example, those benefits were actually trickling down to the consumers. Now, those special powers are being ratified in a special sitting in State Parliament later today, but we've already seen developments over the past week, for example, with the state's Consumer Protection Department writing to all of these fuel resupplier companies in the state to compel them to pass on the information that we just spoke about, again, to get an understanding about how much of those benefits are actually being passed on to the Western Australian consumers. Now, these emergency powers also come with penalties for any companies that refuse or are unable to comply, with a maximum penalty of up to $100,000 per day for any companies which aren't complying, a measure the state government says is necessary to address the ongoing fuel supply chain shock that we're seeing unfold not just across Australia, but across the world.